Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Taos Kalognomos, and I am the Executive Secretary of the Balkan and Black Sea Commission of the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions, an association of some 150 regions from across Europe that is an interlocutor of the European institutions, among others works closely with the European Commission's DG MARE, and provides the Secretariat to the European Parliament's Seas, Rivers, Islands and Coastal Areas, the SYRICA Intergroup, and has a long-standing cooperation with the International Center for Black Studies and the Organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation. It is my great honor to moderate this interesting discussion, and I would like to thank our today's hosts, the ICBSS-BSEC and the European Commission, for their initiative and kind invitation. Our aim today is to exchange views on the initial impact of the Covid-19 outbreak on key sectors of the blue economy in the Black Sea region, in particular coastal and maritime tourism, maritime transport, fisheries, and aquaculture. To this end, our distinguished panelists are Mr. Alexandru Ene, Director for the Western Balkans and Regional Cooperation from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania, on behalf of the Romanian BSEC Chairmanship in Office, Mr. Christos Konomou, Head of Unit Sea Basin Strategies, Maritime Regional Cooperation and Maritime Security from the European Commission's Directorate-General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, DG MARE, Mr. Peter Janek, Senior Officer, Department for Europe from the United Nations World Tourism Organization, Ms. Nadezhda Bukhova, Director of European Coordination and International Relations, Directorate and Coordinator of the Steering Group of the Common Maritime Agenda for the Black Sea from the Ministry of Transport, Information Technology and Communications of the Republic of Bulgaria, and Mr. Konstantin Petrov, Sub-Regional Coordinator for the Black Sea from the General Fisheries Commission for the Mediterranean. All speakers will make an initial intervention, and then with a reverse order, we will start our debate on the basis of the questions of our audience. So in order to respect the time frame, I kindly ask speakers to be concise and in line with the time allocated to the first round of our workshop. I also kindly invite you, dear participants, to use the Q&A feature during interventions so that we can cover any questions after the initial remarks of our distinguished panelists. Please don't forget to identify yourselves so that the speakers have an idea of the institutions asking. Our first panelist for today is Mr. Alexandru Ene. Mr. Ene, could you please share with us the regional experience so far and how you have used the existing frameworks to deal with the COVID-19 challenges for the blue economy sectors?
Hi, hello, good afternoon. Am I being heard?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Kalognomos. I think it's a very good opportunity to have this exchange, especially in this timely exchange, this timely initiative. I would like to start by commending, of course, ICBSS, the European Commission. I'm happy to see here Mr. Konomou, hello, from Bucharest.
Hello.
And of course, the representative of the Fisheries Commissions, representative of the UNWTO, and the distinguished representative of the CMA coordinator from the relevant ministry in Bulgaria, who has joined us today. I would like to say that I think it would be appropriate for me to simply say a very short words of expression of solidarity with all participants who are watching us today, I think, in these difficult times, and to send our condolences from Bucharest to those who have lost their lives in all the countries during these terrible times. So I think that I should start by saying that the current pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, definitely has put a serious pressure on all the health systems of the Black Sea countries. I think that's a clear takeaway. I think it has also left serious consequences on the respective societies and on the economies. We are all now discussing about what is a rebound, economic rebound. I think what we should be doing is to continue to seriously assess the situation from all viewpoints, and remain up to date regarding the needs that we have in the region, as well as simultaneously to try to define concrete ways in order to move forward. I think that despite all the challenges that we have faced internally in coping with this crisis, I'm happy to say that my country, Romania, has made quite an effort to extend some assistance to a number of European countries. I would like to, obviously I will not list now all the recipients, but I would like to single out a few, as I'm speaking on the behalf of the BSEC chairmanship in office, which is held by Romania for this semester, as you know. So therefore I will refer to the recipients and the international solidarity that we had expressed with a number of BSEC member states, BSEC observers, and BSEC partners. I would like to refer to the fact that we sent doctors, teams of doctors and nurses to the most affected region, which, as you know very well, is Lombardia in North Italy, as well. And Italy is one of our observers, to Republic of Moldova, which is one of the member states of BSEC. Also, we have sent a team of doctors and specialists to the US, who is one of our long-standing observers and a strong supporter of cooperation inside BSEC. But also, I would like to especially stress out the European solidarity, whereby we brought our share via the EU Rescue Hub, which is based in Romania, from which already a number of countries, I mentioned Italy. I will mention another, the newest actually member state of our organization, who is the Republic of North Macedonia, but also another observer, Montenegro, who have benefited from the sanitary equipment and medicines from the strategic reserve of the EU on behalf of the EU through the civil protection mechanism of the European Union. But now coming back to the issue of our discussion today, I would like to say that yes, the pandemic has severely affected virtually all the blue economy sectors: coastal, maritime tourism, fisheries, obviously aquaculture. Therefore, I think that we should bear in mind that the blue economy, against all odds, holds a great potential for rebound in the post-COVID-19 recovery, especially as sustainable blue economy will help us come out of this crisis healthier, more resilient, and obviously stronger. To us, maritime renewable energy, sustainable coastal and maritime tourism, marine research, seafood innovation, I think education in blue skills, but also other activities are constituting one of the greatest sectors of the blue economy, and some of them, I would say, have been lately in focus in our region and in most of our member states. I would like now to make a very, very short reference to the political background, if you will, which we are having all the time on the back of our minds when we are working in BSEC. And I refer here to the Romanian presidency of the Council of the EU last year, first semester, where the riparian countries, I think it's important to repeat that, but very shortly I would say this have successfully endorsed in Bucharest what we have already are using, the framework, the Common Maritime Agenda for the Black Sea, as well as the strategic agenda of research and innovation. We are particularly appreciative of the European institutions' support for the events dedicated to the Black Sea, with a particular note, of course, to DG MARE. Now, I think that these two milestone documents, but also the overall results in the region, have set already what we need and what we can call as a strong base in using the huge potential of the blue economy, which I've already mentioned. I said that it's important to pinpoint the political importance and significance of of these two documents and the way these are unfolding. So therefore, I would like also to mention that on the 17th of June 2019, during the former presidency of my country of the Council of the EU, We've also managed to adopt, of course, with the support of all member states and the services of the Commission and the support of the EAS, the first Council conclusion on the Black Sea after more than 1 decade. I simply want to recall that the previous conclusions were adopted exactly in 2007 when our fellow neighbors and partners from Bulgaria together with us joined the European Union. Mr. Kalognomos, you mentioned the fact that another milestone is the adoption of, on the 5th of March 2020, of the review of the EU policy on the Black Sea Synergy, which was huge. I think we can safely say that blue growth is at the core of this important document. I would also like to mention another very positive dynamic of the BSEC-EU interaction that we are having in our organization. And I'm referring here to another joint endeavor of the Romanian presidency of the Council of the EU together with the Bulgarian chairmanship of the BSEC in the first semester of 2019. I'm referring to the first high-level meeting, ministerial level, dedicated to EU BSEC interaction held in Brussels on the 18th of June 2019. Again, I thank the Commission for the support they've extended to us. And I think I would be remiss if I wouldn't mention the importance we are all giving here as chairmanship, but also as a constant of our foreign policy, to engaging constantly the civil society in all the relevant activities. I would like here simply to mention the 12th edition of the Black Sea NGO Forum on the 23rd, 25th October, which had as its headline, consolidating the Black Sea NGO community for sustainable development. Now, I think that all these elements which I've mentioned, and I'm approaching the end of my intervention, are tying in inside the work program of our chairmanship of BSEC, which is continuing regardless the given condition due to the pandemic. Therefore, we are striving and will continue to do so to develop what we call a flexible and closer BSEC-EU cooperation, which will benefit all the BSEC-EU member states by taking advantage of what we have now as the definite increased attention and engagement of the European Union in terms of financial support, but more importantly of political attention. I mentioned the conclusions already in the Black Sea. Definitely this will have a positive impact on all our economies and societies. Now, my country has been and will continue to be a very strong supporter of BSEC-EU cooperation, whereby we promote and facilitate common initiative for what we consider to be the sustainable development in the region, as we consider that such initiatives will definitely contribute to increasing the commitment of the European institutions in terms of finance, as I said, and technical resources to be devoted, which is devoted to the region and to BSEC cooperation all over. So, dear Mr. Moderator, dear Stavros, distinguished participants, in the words of, I think, the UN Secretary-General, Guterres, he said about this crisis that we should use this as an opportunity to build back better. I think the key way one can do this, and we can all do this, and I think this discussion might help again in this framework to set some benchmarks, is to stay the course on development, on sustainable blue economy, environmental protection, climate change, and implementing the SDG 2030 agenda. Again, is also on our work program as chairmanship of BSEC. Now, working on all these elements, I think it's simply the best way forward to set free, so to say, the untapped potential in the region, but also to strengthen what we have as regional cooperation in the area. Obviously, considering that fostering prosperity, stability, and I think this is really important, and I think that we should not shy away from stressing the importance of stability in our region, given its very complex political developments. I think will further contribute to the resilience overall of the region, on the entire continent, and of the Union itself. It will also bring up new opportunities for economic rebound, and they are obviously particularly important for the post-pandemic era in this in our region. Now, in short, and I conclude by saying that I think we all will come out stronger of this after this pandemic, and I hope that our discussion today and what we will be continuing to do in cooperation with all represented, and I think also with the representative that we have in the audience, and I'm looking forward to a positive and constructive interaction with them, will bring out more unity and resilience for all our nations and institutions and help us find the right path to overcome this terrible challenge. I stop here and I thank you very much, Mr. Kalognomos.
I thank you very much, Mr. Rene, for all the information provided, as well as the inspiring quote of the UN Secretary General. Our next speaker is Mr. Christos Konomou from the European Commission's DG MARE. Before I give the floor to Mr. Konomou, let me seize the opportunity, since you mentioned the Common Maritime Agenda for the Black Sea, and share with you a few details about this very important document. So the Common Maritime Agenda for the Black Sea, a sea basin initiative that aims at supporting regional cooperation for a more sustainable blue economy in the Black Sea, and which is developed in the broader framework of the Black Sea Strategy. The participating countries are Bulgaria, Georgia, the Republic of Moldova, Romania, Russia, Turkey, and Ukraine. And the Common Maritime Agenda for the Black Sea is a unique framework of regional cooperation on blue economy, and it was endorsed on the 21st of May last year during the Romanian presidency of the Council of the EU, as you just mentioned. It is complemented by its scientific pillar, the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda for the Black Sea, supported by the European Commission's Directorate-General for Research and Innovation, DGRTD. The Common Maritime Agenda sets 3 goals. One on healthy marine ecosystems, one on innovative blue economy, and the last one on investment. And these 3 goals have 10 priorities further declined into actions. The European Commission's DG MARE accompanies the process as full member of the steering group, where each of the 7 aforementioned countries is represented, while the political coordination is ensured by ministerial meetings. The Common Maritime Agenda has recently launched its implementation. So the first steering group meeting took place last February in Sofia under the Bulgarian coordination for this year. And in a couple of weeks, we'll have the second steering group meeting that will take place and will benefit also from today's discussion. BSEC, the CPMR, the Black Sea Commission, GFCM, and the Black Sea Basin Cross-Border Cooperation Program are the key regional actors that support the initiative. Having said that, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Konomou. If you could please unmute. Yes.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me? Yes, Stavros, good afternoon, and good afternoon to all the and the distinguished panelists. And clearly, thank you for taking the role to coordinate this discussion, which I think is very timely and also very important. I think the previous speaker, Mr. Rene, clearly set the political context. Also from my side, I would say it's very important that we do stay in contact. We do make our accounts at national level, how much this pandemic caused impact to human and economic activities. But also it's very important to talk to each other, to see what solutions we can provide to this situation. And I think the cooperation frameworks that were there needs to be used to the extent possible. Now we have a discussion today, what is the impact the pandemic had in the Black Sea, and also what measures can be envisioned. So it's a first step. Huh? We are not out of the crisis yet, and we are still counting the impacts. But the Common Maritime Agenda that you provided a nice introduction for is there. So we will not create it, and let's see how we can use it. Now, obviously, the different countries have been impacted in a different ways. Different sectors also have been impacted in different ways. And I know that the speakers which will follow will enter into more details on what impacts were in the Black Sea context. And different areas around Europe have also been hit in different ways, depending on what sectors we talk about. Overall, there is an impact. And the EU clearly put its acts together by proposing, I mean, from the Commission side, a big recovery fund. I mean, this was in the news. It's clearly big amounts that we're looking at that need to be directed towards the solutions and measures to reply to the crisis. And even the EU is also following a proposal by the Commission discussing the increase even in the multi-annual financial framework for the years that follow 2021 to 2027 to increase the funding because we have an exceptional situation. The same goes also for funds directed to support non-EU countries through the Team Europe initiative. So I will not enter into more details, but it is really important to understand there is a collective effort here. In the Black Sea area, clearly we have EU and partner countries, and all these countries have joint efforts in this Common Maritime Agenda, but that both yourself and Mr. Rene mentioned on how important is to work on that. Now, what is key to remember from our side is that the content of the agenda provides priorities that can also provide solutions in the new approach for the recovery. And it is flexible enough to look into the different actions to prioritize. And we have a coordination of the Common Maritime Agenda under the Bulgaria as the first coordinator. So I think in their intervention, clearly they will mention how important it is to work and continue to work implementing this agenda even in the current circumstances. But also we have to see what we want to prioritize. How do we want to work on flagship projects that will allow those sectors that are hit the most to recover? The funds, there should be an effort aligning funds, because clearly it's one thing to have the good ideas, but then how do we work to align these funds? And this is an effort that should come from many different sources. As Mr. N mentioned, and yourself, I think, the agenda also contains a chapter on investment. How do we promote investment in the area of the Black Sea and for the priorities of the Common Maritime Agenda? Here is really the time to look in that on that side of the agenda and try to bring together the investments that are needed, whether they come from the EU side, from national side, from regions, from international investors. The needs are there, whether we talk about fisheries, about transport, digitalization, ports, connectivity, all this, tourism, clearly, all these are there. But then we have to see where we can make the difference. Now, the other thing, and I will close with that, what we need to remember is that we have the opportunity here when we try to promote actions to reset the approach. I mean, a lot has been said about the Green Deal and the priorities the EU has provided for climate change and the targets that we have before the crisis happened. Now, I heard the words both from you and from Mr. Ene, sustainability. Sustainable blue economy is the target. And when we facing crisis and we're looking to the impacts and looking on the way out, it is the time really to think what we want to promote, what type of recovery we want, and what is really time to put our accent to and not getting simply back to what we had before. So this is, I think, the choice to make in these current circumstances. And I think we have the framework. The Common Maritime Agenda is there. The scientific agenda, SRIA, is there. And the countries have the motivation. So I count on them. I count on all the those that supported this new sea-based strategy to support it also as a mean to get out of the crisis and to mitigate the impact of it. So thank you very much. That's my first contribution to the debate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Economou, for your enlightening remarks. We can see the questions coming, so I'm sure we can get back to some key points of your intervention later on. So from the general framework, I would like to pass now to the specific sectors affected by the COVID-19 outbreak and start with the coastal and maritime tourism sector. Mr. Yanek, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stavros. Can you hear me? Can you hear me all?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to participate among such distinguished guests and participants. This is actually the second time within a week that I'm taking part in a webinar or a workshop organized also by the BSEC Secretariat. Since last week, it was the BSEC Working Group on Tourism that I had the opportunity to also represent UNWTO, which is the specialized agency of the United Nations dedicated on sustainable tourism development around the world. Without further ado, I will go into the details of my special segment, which is coastal and maritime tourism, and would like to set the tone, which is at this stage might sound negative. We know that coastal and maritime tourism is at the heart of the BSEC member states' policies and government priorities. And we know that in the last couple of years, there was a constant growth between 5 and 6% international tourist arrival, which was also, also incorporated into national economies as hard currencies. So nevertheless, when it comes to this, we had really high hopes at the beginning of 2020 that the year is going to be extremely positive. We predicted a very positive year for Europe. We predicted positive years for all around the world. And unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world, hit the world economy. And of course, one of the hardest sector which was suffering or is still suffering is tourism. We were from the beginning providing and working hand in hand with the Commission to provide them reliable data when it comes to tourism. And then the latest scenarios which we are seeing for the future is based on 3 scenarios. One is a positive one, is a middle ground, and then the worst case scenario. One which is seeing opening of borders and having the international tourism restart in July. Even if we restart in July, the decline of international tourism would account 58%. A more negative picture, if the international tourism resumes only in September, we count a decline of 70%, 70. And then the worst case scenario, where the international tourism would go back to more or less on a normal level, it counts with a 78% of decline. So as you can see from a global level, it's a tragical data predicted for our sector with all its consequences on the socio-economic and environmental sector. When it comes to specific BSEC member states, the global numbers also are reflected in the BSEC member states. Just to name a few, for example, Romania in the first quarters reported almost a 10% minus, Turkey 22% minus, Azerbaijan almost 15% minus, And in a global European level, we received or we predicted more or less almost a 20% minus. So as you can see, when it comes to global tourism numbers, the picture is really negative. And when it comes to future predictions, we can go from bad to worse. We hope that the latest opening and the latest communication on tourism by the European Commission and its implications to resume travel at the middle of July, early July, will have a positive effect and will also reflect on a regional level. If you know, UNWTO as a global UN agency was hoping really much for this year. There were 3 specific conferences which would have an implications on the blue economy. The 2020 Ocean Conferences, which would have taken place in Portugal, was postponed. The 2020 Biodiversity Conference, which would have taken place in China, was postponed. And of course, the 2020 COP26 Climate Change Conference in Ireland, Glasgow, was also postponed. So what we see that this year, which was having high hopes at the global level when it comes to specifically on various aspects of the blue economy, was providing by the implications of the COVID, will have to take place next year. Nevertheless, we see this maybe as an opportunity. We see as an opportunity which provides for the sector. I would like to join on my previous, on the colleagues of the previous speakers to say, to set the tone for the recovery, which type of recovery do we have, which kind of recovery wants to achieve. And again, I can just join for my previous colleagues that I think the core element of sustainability, not only as a political slogan, but finally to put behind efforts, financial resources, and the political will and commitment should be key for the recovery when it comes to our sector. When it comes to UNWTO and global activities, the industry was united, and UNWTO created a Global Tourism Crisis Committee, which was brought up by the 5 regions we are having in UNWTO and representing the world as a global, and of course UN sister agencies and the private sector to come up a potential initiative and activities in a response to the COVID-19. We created an online system which was collecting all the measures by the countries. Among others, it was the Black Sea member states, which are actually all the Black Sea member states are UNWTO member states, and we're providing the vital platform to get the best practices and lessons learned from the other countries, which was approved by our global committee, and which we created actually 3 specific guidance and documents which was approved by this specific committee. One was the priorities for tourism recovery. The other one was global guidelines to restart tourism. And the other one, which was the first in a chronological order, a call for actions to mitigate the socio-economic impact of the COVID-19 and accelerate the recovery. I think it's important, and I think we are going to go into details in the second part of the presentations, that we talk about the social, economic, and environmental impact of what the COVID was brought to the countries of BSEC, and how the countries should come out from this crisis. I would like to bring also 2 extra points to the discussion. I think once again this crisis proved how important the data analysis, the sufficient data analysis, which provides the basis for effective decision makers of politicians, not only at the national level, regional level, but also at destination level, municipality level, when sometimes the decisions are more reflected than at national level. And the other one, I think it's monitoring of the impact, which also feeding back to my first point about the data and data analysis, and once again the importance of sustainability and how this is going to be reflected on the recovery. So this should have been my initial reflections, and I'm looking forward to receive specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Janek. I would just like to remind participants that they have the opportunity to share with us their questions through the Q&A's feature. So please feel free to ask questions. Even if we don't have the time to answer to all of them during our today's meeting, we'll surely take them into consideration for the meetings to come. So one of the first measures adopted to deal with COVID-19 outbreak was the restriction of transports, with a huge impact on maritime transport as well. I would like to welcome Ms. Buchova, representative of the coordinator of the steering group on the Common Maritime Agenda for the Black Sea, to share with us the Bulgarian perspective on this issue.
Thank you, Stavros. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to take part in today's online workshop, and I will present Bulgaria's point of view. Given the restriction in mobility and the halt of most economic activities, maritime transport has been heavily impacted. According to the data, cargo transport has decreased in the order of 30–40%. The accumulation of containers and cargo stored in ports has been reported in some cases due to the halt of activities down the chain. Decreases are larger for passenger ships, almost 70% decrease in the number of calls. The COVID-19 outbreak has made the conduct of maritime security inspections and surveys difficult. They require physical inspectors. This also applies to maritime security drills and exercises, which may also be difficult to carry out during respective national lockdowns. Due to the government measures that have become necessary in view of the COVID-19 outbreak, the transport operators and other persons concerned are in many cases not able to complete the necessary formalities or procedures to comply with certain provisions related to the renewal, extension, or continued validity of certificates, licenses, or authorizations. Based on this, in the post-crisis period, it is very important to preserve and even expand the capacity to build and develop the key elements of the maritime transport. This could be done through core policy initiatives which definitely address sustainability, digitalization, and financial resilience. In this regard, priority should be given to key factors like less carbon-intensive energy sources, in order to facilitate access to finance without stringent conditions and to secure the liquidity of particular attention. I'm sorry.
Could you please repeat the last part because the sound was not that.
Okay. The last part is it okay now?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay. The last part concerned the priority which should be given to key factors like less carbon intensive energy sources, flexibility of the shipping sector, and initiatives in order to facilitate access to finance without stringent conditions and to secure liquidity that there are all present in the government. Particular attention deserves also the need to take investment in research and innovations, and the need to work closely with the industry in the Black Sea region, so that we have to further elaborate on projects in this aspect, like the project SRIA. Regarding the importance of crew changes, we should not lose sight of the fact that starting June 15th, Replacements will need to take place to keep shipping and the world move. The issue should remain a priority in the EU agenda as well as in the Black Sea region, with the necessary maximum flexibility in the issuance of visas for cruise and continuous engagement with third countries of origin and transit of seafarers. Regarding specific actions of the Common Maritime Agenda, one of the things we could learn from the COVID crisis is the importance of digitalization for the economic efficiency of all aspects of the blue economy. In this context, Bulgarian coordination of the Common Agenda will continue to work for implementation of the smart and green transformation of the Black Sea, by means of development of, I'm sorry?
Now we can hear you.
Is there a problem with
the sound, but now, with the
sound?
Sorry?
Are there any participants who are not able to hear me very well?
Now it's fine. Now the sound is fine.
Okay. So I would like to repeat once again that in this context, Bulgarian coordination of the Common Maritime Agenda will continue to work for implementation of a smart and green transformation of the Black Sea through promotion of a sustainable and safe shipping by means of development of modern navigation systems and enhanced deployment of innovative green technologies. With regard to maritime transport, it is particularly important to speed up the process of digitalization. Significant added value could be achieved by taking advantage of the potential that the innovative digital technologies present. The implementation and integration of port information systems, modernization and expansion of the functionality of traffic management systems, combined with the implementation of electronic documents, will not only allow improving the quality of services and competitiveness, but can help reduce the harmful impact on the environment through high efficiency of operations. Regarding maritime transport in Bulgaria, it should be noted that the country has made serious progress in digitalization of information and the implementation of digital systems for shipping traffic management and information services. Progress in the area favors dealing with the consequences of the crisis. Thanks to this, significant difficulties have been avoided, which would result in losses in every respect: time, resources, competitiveness. By mid-2022, Bulgaria plans to expand the scope of digitalization by including the handling of cargo in ports, thus creating favorable conditions for further development of multimodal transport. The system for electronic exchange of information in Bulgarian ports, Port Community System, the implementation of which will significantly improve the efficiency of maritime transport, especially in circumstances similar to those of the current crisis. In conclusion, focusing on the restoration of the maritime transport, it is necessary to pay attention to its sustainable and intelligent recovery so that it retains its fundamental importance for the economy of the countries and the lives of the citizens. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Buchova. Despite the sound issues we had to face, I think that the message is clear, and I am sure that many of our partners and participants would like to ask for more details regarding the topics you raised. Last but not least, I would like to invite Mr. Petrov from the Fisheries and Aquaculture sector to share with us the GFCM's perspective regarding the COVID-19 outbreak and the initiatives launched to deal with it in an effective way.
Thank you, Stavros. I hope you hear me well. I have a bit of connection here and I'm trying to fix this, but I don't know how you hear me now. Is it okay? Yeah? So first, many thanks to our hosts for inviting me to this conference and online webinar or very interesting to see how we will discuss further. It's extremely important aquaculture in the midst of the COVID pandemic. Fisheries and aquaculture, I would say this is one sector, not two sectors, but two particular when we try to detect challenges and responsive actions nowadays. And here I would like to draw the attention right from the beginning to on their management by all countries, by all littoral countries in the Black Sea, together sharing the stocks in the specific sea basin. So we know that fisheries is a pillar of the blue economy and it interrelates with the other sectors of the economy on a macro frame and its micro frame, but later on we will see the two directions. Now, in terms of a pure statistic and the role of GFCM in the Black Sea, I would like to mention that fisheries and aquaculture are a source of essential part of the fabric of communities. Just the pure facts for the Black Sea look like this. Around between 11,000 and 20,000 fishing vessels are operating in the region, in the area. And we could say that more than 90% belong to the small-scale fisheries subsector. The revenue goes to 350 million total revenue, half of which is made by the small-scale sector. And in terms of employment, I would say that more than 20,000 jobs are secured there. And again, to draw the picture complete, I would say that around 75% from these jobs belong to the small-scale fisheries. And in terms of production, it's around 400 tons total production. You know that aquaculture is very strongly developed in Turkey and in Bulgaria. I mean, in Turkey, sea bass, sea bream, and trout cages, and we have in Bulgaria our mussel production here. So let's have a small presentation of the regional fisheries management organization and the crucial role of international cooperation here in the region. As you know, in the macro frame, all of the international bodies and structures like Black Sea Advisory Council, like the BSEC, Black Sea Economic Cooperation, Eurofish, the Black Sea Commission, and together with GFCM, they have their role in the different aspects of fisheries, especially of the sustainable fisheries, which means economic aspect, environmental, the social aspect, even the political. In terms of the, if we look at the micro frame, we can see that the role of the regional fisheries management organization, namely the General Fisheries Commission for the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, is crucial in terms of conservation and sustainable use of living marine resources and the sustainable development of aquaculture. You know that the Commission is supported or has a specific body. This is a statutory body for the Black Sea. This is the working group for the Black Sea in charge of providing advice to the Commission on fisheries management in the Black Sea. This working group is supported from a Black Sea for Fish project that bridges the gaps at regional level, providing the working group in the necessary resources to efficiently execute its priority actions and supporting the implementation of the midterm strategy. Its work involves all riparian countries, not just the countries that are members or cooperating members in the Commission. I mean, here we have three countries member together with the fourth part, the EU, Bulgaria, Romania, Turkey, and two cooperating countries, Ukraine and Georgia. And then we have the Black Sea for Fish. This is a cooperative mechanism among scientists within the GFCM, and it is supporting the scientific knowledge, the assessment of the illegal, unregulated and unreported fisheries, small-scale fisheries structure, the interaction between fisheries and environment, and the technical and institutional cooperation among the coastal states. And here is to say that we have as well a sub-regional technical unit located in Burgas in Bulgaria that provides support to the GFCM in implementation of its mandate in the Black Sea, including through providing administrative backstopping to the activities of the working group for the Black Sea and the Black Sea for Fish project. And in this way, it facilitates the communication with the riparian countries. And here is the time to mention that the COVID impacted really international cooperation at the beginning. This was a shock. You know, the cooperation towards achieving the sustainable fisheries and the goals has continued through online activities and coordination and advancements. Of course, it's not as it is in person, but here it's important to continue the work to enhance international cooperation towards the provision of common Black Sea advice and for the management of the stocks. So now clearly the impact of COVID in figures. This was up to 80% decrease in number of vessels operations, and aquaculture operations as well very greatly here during this pandemic. More than 75% decrease in production in most countries. Change in targeted species, for example, away from higher value species designed to export market towards lower value species designed to local markets. And what we witness here in the region as well was for the turbot prices March and April, and from the first shock there was a 20 to 70% decrease of price, which was really a shock for fishermen as well. And I am sure for the consumers this was a positive surprise, but for the fishermen and for the functioning of the whole chain economic, it was a surprise. And then we had an initial 20-70% in this 30 to 40 decline in aquaculture farm revenue. Yeah, certain species more acutely affected, like shellfish, sea bream, due to there was a restaurant closure. The whole gastronomic sector stopped functioning, and we had difficulties in transportation. You know, the borders were closed, so the markets tried to orient to local production and local demand. These were changes that affected the sector, and we followed the measures taken. The sector had recovered slowly after the first shock. I mean, to be able to implement measures like health and safety measures, closing ports, quarantine foreign vessels, closure to open fish market, disinfection of ports, fishing boats, providing masks for workers, you know, markets as well. Started implementing measures to ensure the continuity of food supply. There was a home delivery, for example, the markets, and mitigation measures were taken from some of the coastal states separately or in coordination in between. And here we saw that social protection measures, social assistance, health insurance are really important, and we should continue working on them to have the lesson learned and to be able to build on, in fact, the success stories that we have and the success stories in the international cooperation, especially in the regional fisheries management or Sea4Fish project that is providing crucial support to countries to perform the technical work needed to fulfill the requirements of the obligations. We have the third multi-annual management plan. That is, for the first time in the Black Sea, we have a total allowable catch for all the countries and a mechanism to determine country quotas. And on top, we have...
Yes, could you please speed up, and we'll have the opportunity to get back.
Aquaculture, the most centers, which were proved to be an excellent to serve the...
Mr. Petrov, since the sound is not good, in order to get some time to fix the problem if possible, I would like to thank you for your clarifying remarks. And as we have representatives from the sector among us who are sending some interesting questions, I would like to start with the round of questions. And I would propose then that Mr. Econom and Mr. Ene make some final remarks at the end of our workshop. So I would suggest 2-3 minutes for each speaker so that we make the discussion more interesting for our audience. And please feel also welcome to include your final remarks in your answer. So let me start with Mr. Petrov. We have several questions for fisheries. So one very interesting question is about sustainability in the core factor. So in general, this question is addressed to all panelists, but in what concerns fishing in the Black Sea, do you certainly welcome smaller scale of fishing imposed by COVID-19 pandemic? Do you think it could help to introduce more sustainable ways of fishing in order to preserve the last species remaining in our Black Sea? And what about the role of the landlocked member states? So there are BSEC member states that are not part of the Common Maritime Agenda. How could they contribute to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak on key sectors of the blue economy, the Black Sea region, and especially the fisheries one?
Thank you. A very interesting question that I could speak a long time on this. What are the key messages to keep the sustainability or the sustainable method and approach on managing our economies in our specific case, fisheries and aquaculture? So we have key messages that COVID-19 represents an acute shock which tested the resilience of fisheries and aquaculture, underlined strengths and weak points for ensuring a resilient sector. Now comes the question how to equip the sector to more resilience in the face of future shocks. It's not only COVID, we can face some other shocks, and we have faced already, or we faced in the future as well, in the past. So there is a need for better management and more attention to social issues, also underlined by CIOFA 2020, fellow. And we need to double down on key areas of work like sustainable fisheries management, strengthening cooperatives and engaging stakeholders in decision making, market innovations, including direct selling, social protection to reduce vulnerability and ensure capacity to respond to future works. But let me just mention at last the international cooperation and the role of the landlocked countries that are around the area as well. In the context of blue economy, it's closely linked to having the possibility to benefit from healthy fish stocks and a healthy marine ecosystem, which means that in the fight against IUU, in the making the market sustainable and ensuring the transport corridors as well, we can have their role. And during the COVID-19 crisis, we have been able to realize the importance of liaison and cooperation in the regional and international bodies, but with the active participations, not only the littoral states, but the countries that are bordering them, and could contribute for securing market and in the fight against the illegal, unreported, and unregulated activities. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Petrov. I would like now to go to Ms. Buchova. We have a few questions about the transport sector and how it could work closely with the industry, as you mentioned during your intervention. So first of all, let me seize the opportunity to say that the BSEC Permis presented the results of the two relevant video meetings it hosted last week. And they have already initiated concrete actions in order to mitigate negative impact of COVID-19 regarding tourism and transports. So the active engagement of BSEC members is imperative if we wish to obtain concrete results, are some comments we received from BSEC Permis. And we'd also like to take into consideration in our approach, if possible, the role of the international banks. How could you think that the international banks could help the different sectors, transport sector included, in post-COVID recovery in the Black Sea and in the implementation of the Common Maritime Agenda for the Black Sea?
Thank you very much, Stavros. We share the opinion that public investment with the support of the international financial institution are very important to relaunch the recovery of the transport sector, and especially to the maritime transport. And they should come with commitment to invest in clean and more sustainable mobility. But on the other side, in the interest of the economy and consumers, all the measures in a way which preserve the pre-crisis market structures and pave the way for a speedy economic recovery.
Thank you very much, Ms. Buchova. I'm sure there will be further discussion on this topic. It's a very important one. Also for tourism, because tourism without transport cannot exist. So we'll make sure to link it somehow in the near future. Then I'd like to share with you a question regarding public and private partnerships. And this question is addressed mainly to the representatives of the UNWTO and the European Commission. So if there are any plans to promote and fund cross-regional PPP initiatives that will increase tourist influx in the Black Sea region by creating a special fund outside existing funding programs, and if such a prospect be project-driven or policy-driven.
Then, if I may, from a UNWTO/UN perspective, I would say that UNWTO, unfortunately, is not a founding agency, so UNWTO would not be able to provide any sufficient fund. Nevertheless, as you might know, the UN as such put together a global crisis recovery fund, which is implemented at member states level. So the UN country offices, which are having a presence in the BSEC countries, are the ones who are the driving force behind the relevant support activities. I have seen that there was also a question from a colleague from the World Bank, which I was really happy to see. Also, the World Bank are having country representations, country offices in the majority of the BSEC countries, independently of they are landlocked or they are forming part of the Black Sea Basin. So over there is a UN-driven coordination among the agencies which are present, and hand in hand with their national governments are working together already to come up with some specific projects, of course, projects-driven initiatives, which are matching the policy-driven global framework. So that was from my end.
And what about tourism diversification in the region?
Yes, I saw that question also for myself in the Q&A panel. Of course, independently of the pandemic or not pandemic, tourism diversification is an issue for not only for the Black Sea countries, but any countries in the world to come up with a relevant and sufficient answer from the changing consumer needs. So of course, that could be part of the answer. I wouldn't say that this is the answer for the recovery. Diversification could be part of the answer when it comes to relevant tourism products.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to go now to Mr. Econom, if you can hear us.
I don't know if can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Thank you very much for having fixed the
I
problem.
have many difficulties in connecting, I have to tell you. So if you, so I missed quite a lot of the discussion.
So one question addressed to the European.
Can you tell me where?
Yes, of course. So we're summing up the results of our today's workshop. One question addressed to the European Commission is about the role of landlocked countries in the Common Maritime Agenda of the Black Sea, since they are not covered by this policy so far. And the other one is about the role of ocean observing and monitoring in tracking the sector's response to the pandemic. How can research and innovation actors can help to this end?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, if I understood correctly, the first question was about landlocked countries.
Yes.
Whether to what extent they can participate to the Common Maritime Agenda. Is that? Yeah. So first of all, we have to see how the agenda and this cooperation framework, which is very new, is implemented by the countries that have undertaken the responsibility, and they took the initiative to come together and to create common priorities and common projects. The idea is, of course, that this agenda addresses the issues of the sea, the Black Sea. So clearly, the landlocked countries are less concerned, if I can say, put it like that, from many of the priorities that part of this Common Maritime Agenda. Now, we live in a world which involves, and obviously certain of the issues like connectivity are multifaceted. Obviously, when you talk about ports, you always look to what these ports are connected. I mean, hinterland connections, logistics, and all that. So I will not exclude that countries around the area have an interest on how this agenda and what type of projects are, realized through this agenda. But first of all, implementation lies with the countries that have committed to this joint agenda. Now, projects that could come through the cooperation may have partners from a broader, let's say, environment. This is also what happens in other cases of sea basins. I will not exclude that. But we are in early days of implementing this agenda, and I don't want to prejudge how things will, be taken, developed through this, the different possibilities that are given to the countries. So this this is my careful reply to your first question. And the second was, you had the second question.
Yes, it was about public and private partnerships, relevant initiatives that could increase tourist influx in the Black Sea region.
So you refer generally to public-private for the tourism, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, generally, from the EU side, we see public-private partnership as very important tool to increase impact of activities, particularly those related to research and development, or creating, let's say, consortia that can realize big projects. Huh? So now depends what we like to achieve in the tourism sector, because very often, if you have the participation of the public sector, clearly you need to know what numbers are come together from the side of the private sector and who is represented there. So in the tourism sector, particularly because it is per se quite fragmented, one has to look in what type of sector within the tourism sector we envisage to have this type of partnership. So it is not like everything applies to all situations. Huh? Public, private, it is clearly one of the tools that can be used, partnerships in that way, but I don't think whether they fit everything. Particularly tourism has to be seen also with the context of how much fragmentation and what type of part of the tourism we are looking at to see whether it's possible to develop these public partnerships. And again, it is, I mean, for the countries that have this type of possibility, because clearly you need to have investment from the public sector. Yeah? It's not enough that the private sector is asking for this. Is one of the tools to consider. But I will leave it to that because I don't know exactly in what context you want this to be applied.
Thank you very much for this. And I would like to get back to Mr. Enne for his final remarks, and also for the role of banks to the post-COVID era.
Yeah, is it okay?
Yes.
You hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Kalogamos? Thank you. Well, I think I will attempt to summing up already that has been mentioned here. And I think I would single out three main ideas, which I already heard were touched and also raised in the Q&A section. First of all, I would refer to the need to find ways around reviving tourism, as it were. And I heard what this representative of the UNWTO has said. I think it's very useful. I think I will try to respond by giving a simple example that comes from the region. Again, not necessarily the Black Sea region, but I would say the Southeast European region. I'm referring to a example of 4 parties cooperation that brings together my country, Hellenic Republic, Republic of Bulgaria, and Republic of Serbia. So it's a 4-party cooperation. And I would like to say that all the relevant authorities, starting from the highest level, that is heads of government, have been in constant contact on identifying, in accordance with the guidelines and the warnings and the benchmarks which were set by the WHO, by UNWTO, respective studies and statistics that we have, of course, not least by the European Union, various strategies to, again, open up tourism among these four countries. So I think this is an example that can be replicated also in the wider region of the Black Sea, with many more members. You have made already a reference to the fact that the Romanian chairmanship has organized last week a meeting, online meeting, as it were, with the member states on reviving tourism, the working group on tourism. And the person that, and I want to thank for your participation, Peter, for the representative of UNWTO. I know that you were there. You've seen, I think that as a clear expression of the importance the chairmanship attaches to that. The chair of the meeting was chaired by a state secretary in the relevant ministry of Romania. So we are taking this very seriously, but of course, the first and foremost concern is to the health of our citizens. Obviously, we are not acting in a vacuum. We are constantly coordinating with the other three governments, which I mentioned, and our ambition is to bring this, I would say, positive example forth inside BSEC. And I also know that in ICBSS, there is a wealth of knowledge regarding ways of developing various forms of tourism, including, obviously, the blue economy blueprint, so to say. So I can only say that we look forward to cooperating further with you during our chairmanship and even after in order to take this forth. I would also like to mention that because Mr. Economou has mentioned it, that he made a reference to how the European Commission has extended financial and technical help to EU member states, but most importantly also to partner countries of the European Union, which I would put it in the context of a follow-up of the European Union's response to the post-pandemic conditions. Very briefly, and I think it's important for all of us here to share with the audience that the EU had a very strong post-pandemic response, which was took the shape of a macro-financial assistance. I stress that this also covered the partners that do happen to be member states of our organization. I think this is important to be singled out, the macro-financial assistance. And some of them, not all of them, I admit this, but some of them also benefited from a joint procurement agreement for sanitary and medical devices. They were given direct access to financial support by the European Commission. This needs to be acknowledged, I think, as a concrete outcome of the cooperation. Now, yesterday, I think one more thing that we need to look at and perhaps draw some lessons from it. The European Commission, I think, launched a very interesting application, a new app that is called Reopen EU. That gives, it's basically a one single entry point for data and information that are very important for citizens that want to cross border, that want to practice tourism, contains the information needed for transport, for, of course, public health measures like face masks, the fact that museums or places of worships like churches or mosques can be visited, and how can they be visited, and so on and so forth. How many people can do that? I think this is a very welcome way to put all the data that has been fragmented more or less nationally. We also need to acknowledge that in one place where the citizens can, draw the necessary data and even see interactive maps, as far as I've tried myself the respective app. Even more importantly, I would say on a positive note, before I end, there are also practical information about which beaches are open and how can they be attended, and what bars will be open in this summer in which country, in a given country. I would not say that we attempt to replicate this inside BSEC, but I think it's a very good starting point to disseminate the lessons learned among our member states and see where we can take it forth from there. There is one caveat. Is that okay now? Yeah, Peter has shared that with us, that obviously the information on the respective app is based on data that is being drawn from the national authorities. So I think there is a lot of work to do on the governments, but also on all stakeholders in all our societies to make sure that responsible, accurate data is transmitted. And I said in my previous speech that Resilience is an important factor. Within this context, I would like to stress how crucial the free and transparent and obviously objective information transmitted by mass media that needs to be very clear and very to the point when sharing such information, basically to make sure that it can operate in a safe and free and transparent environment becomes in this context. Now, by way of ending my concluding remarks, I would like to say that it is important to have our discussion ending in a strong plea, which I would make. I think it's a plea in favor of what we like to call regional cooperation. This is a clear, pure example of what we are doing in BSEC. It's pure example of multilateralism in action. And I think this is the way to go ahead, regardless we are talking about economies or transport or tourism or PPPs, which it was mentioned. Of course, one needs to take into account how the private sector, the banking sector can be involved. We have the BSTDB, perhaps we can be a little bit more creative with involving our bank, maybe with involving the business communities in our countries via the Business Council. I take this opportunity to say that on the 24th of June, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Romania will organize a similar video event, and I hereby invite all of you on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce to maybe have a look at this event that will simply focus on what the business circles in all BSEC member states are thinking and the steps they are taking forward for the economic rebound. So 24th of June. And I think that I will say thank you very much for inviting me to this. And perhaps you have noticed, Stavros, that behind me, there is the logo, the motto actually, of the Romanian chairmanship. I think it's very illustrative for our post-pandemic discussion. It says enhancing cohesion. I think this is what we all need to do. And therefore, of course, the shores of the Black Sea, landlocked or not, will be closer. Thank you very much. And sorry for taking up most of your time. Thank you. Bye.
Stavros, you are unmuted.
I am unmuted. So, if Mr. Economou could contribute with some final remarks. Yes. Okay.
Sorry. Well, I'm trying to save on sound and an image for staying connected. So I managed to follow you. Thank you for giving me also the floor, Stavros. Just to say and also echo what the previous speaker mentioned, that cooperation was always the motto when we came up with this sea basin strategy for the Black Sea. Now, there are ideas I heard today around how to make concrete projects on the sectors that have been more impacted. It's important to understand also that whether there are funds, there is also need for ideas. And if there are possibilities for the countries to invest, they have to do carefully also with the new means that will come their way, to which way sustainability can be promoted through recovery. We have, as I said, an opportunity around that. Second, just on the practical side, because I didn't have the opportunity to mention earlier, we have also the facility, the new assistance mechanism which will come into effect funded by the European Commission to support the Common Maritime Agenda. And there, obviously, I think that would be an extra help to the countries to identify concrete projects and also work on ideas that can materialize for promoting the recovery, because it's good to exchange on policy level, it's good to give priorities, but somebody needs also to realize the projects to provide, I think, clear, let's say, directions. It's fine through the policy, but also the private sectors, the banks need to receive the message the stakeholders need to be involved, whether they are the regions or the different economic actors that will need also to put their acts together to create these new possibilities around recovery. So this is what I wanted to say, to thank BSEC, to thank you for, of course, hosting this event. And it's certainly not the end of the discussion. It's among, I think it's part of the beginning. So thank you again, and I thank also all the panelists and the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am sure that your clarifications have provided useful food for thought to our audience, and we'll make sure that apart from the video of our online workshop, any further queries the audience asked and were not answered during our meeting will be forwarded to your services. Before closing, I would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Mr. Ene, Mr. Economou, Mr. Janek, Ms. Buchova, and Mr. Petrov, as well as the invisible heroines, Ms. Georgia Handzi from the ICBSS, Ms. Rosita Stoyeva from BSEC, Ms. Patricia Bussolini from the European Commission's DG MARE, and Ms. Anna Kardzeva from the Bulgarian Coordination team of the Common Maritime Agenda for the Black Sea, for their personal engagement and excellent coordination. We also thank you, our online audience, for your interest and sending us your constructive questions. Let me seize the opportunity to inform you that on the 7th of July, the Syrica Intergroup will host a webinar on towards sustainable tourism in the maritime and coastal regions of Europe and the perspectives of the recovery from the COVID-19 crisis and beyond. The invitations will be sent within the next few days. So thank you once again for your attention. I'm looking forward to staying in touch with you and wish you all a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.